Hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Georgiana.
And this is Wholehearted Loving, where we teach you simple tools for self-love and compassion to grow the muscles you need to be with big feelings, triggers, and overwhelming sensations in your body.
Whether you have active challenges in your life or relationships, or whether you're just here to learn to be kinder to yourself, we pull out all the little things that make life feel better, the things that give you a sense of hope and direction.
So if you're too hard on yourself or on others,
if you want to feel real, deep connection in your life and relationships,
even if you want to reprogram your inner critic while you're sleeping,
this is a great place to be.
So welcome, and we hope this episode brings you just the tidbit you needed today.
Enjoy the show.
Appreciation for good things in our lives, especially unexpected things.
Can you sing it like that? Reminds me of the facts of life.
Okay. So, hello, everybody. I can't make today's topic into a tidy sentence, so we're turning it into a little ditty. We're going to be talking about appreciation for good things in our lives, especially unexpected things, and bringing it down into the body.
And I don't know if any of you, that reminds me, I was telling Steph, makes me think of the facts of life, the show. Does it make you, do you see where I'm making that connection?
The facts of life. Yeah, any singing words that are meant to be words, but somebody's singing them for some reason.
Okay, well, I was, what were we, 80s kids, 90s kids? Mm-hmm. So, the facts of life. Just sing everything that you want to say that makes no coherent sense, and it will sound good.
That's perfect. That's, yeah, sometimes true. Okay, so that's what we're talking about today, and you'll be able to find self-reflection prompts for this episode and every episode on our Instagram at Wholehearted Loving, and you can learn more about how to sing songs with us and just with us live on our website at wholeheartedloving.com. Before we get started, we are going to do a body-based self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other and the silliness, I suspect, of today's podcast.
It's interesting because the practice I have in mind to share doesn't connect me necessarily to silly energy, but now that you said that, maybe it would, maybe it will. But it's to play with your relationship to your spine and how that feels. So you might want to just notice what position it's in just to begin with, without changing anything. You might notice how it might want to be repositioned if you realize it's actually not currently comfortable. And then the invitation is to play. What is it like to explore a spine that has access to a lot of spaciousness for movement? Right? And if you could play in that space, notice whether it wants to make small movements and use just a little bit of extra space, or does it want to use a lot of space? What does it feel like to go back and forth between giving it a lot of space and then sort of narrowing that spaciousness a bit? What about straightening and bending? Does the upper spine want something different than the lower spine? I have an image of all those 3D printed dragons for some reason. And that all their little parts can move.
Oh, now I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. What might it feel like to connect with the sense of a sturdy spine? Right. What posture might that turn into if you connected to the idea of a sturdy spine? What about a spine that's ready and alert and still a bit relaxed. And then what if you like turn up the dial on relaxed and turn down the dial on like ready and alert? And you can play with that dial a little bit yourself. Like what happens if you crank it or like just shift it a touch? Is there a sweet spot balance between ready and alert, sturdy and relaxed and supple, restful? And just noticing what kind of presence you bring now to yourself and your space after playing with that a little bit.
Sometimes I feel like a stone vampire. I could stay in one position unmovingly for a long time.
While being comfortable or uncomfortable or disconnected to level of comfort?
It could be any of those things. But if I'm paying attention, it would definitely become uncomfortable unless I move a little bit every now and again. You know, it gets this rigid, stagnant feeling. Like if it moved suddenly, it would be sharp instead of supple. So it's like I need to reconnect with musculature and things on a regular basis, or it gets heavy and still.
Right. Yeah. I like that. That reminds me of when people ask, how often should I do these body practices? How often should I, do things that feel like they're supporting my nervous system? Or when should I do them? Or why don't they work when I try to use them when I'm losing my mind? And it always reminds me to offer the reminder to sprinkle them throughout your day on a regular basis. Right? So if you want to be able to be present and alert, right? Even sometimes be able to navigate through hard things. I'm taking away that if you give some room and spaciousness and tending to your spine or to your body every now and again, then you have more capacity.
Yes.
To do whatever the thing is. Right? But you actually also possess the ability to like not tend to yourself on a regular basis and do the thing. It just might have other impacts on you or might not be super sustainable or might not ultimately feel the best.
Yeah. I'm just such a huge proponent of do these tiny things as often as you can remember, and then please enjoy the delights when they crop up unannounced in difficult times, and they're so helpful.
And I feel like you saying that is something you would have never said in the past.
No, I would have told myself to shut up. Yeah.
Which sort of ties to our topic of the day.
Yeah.
What did you underestimate? You underestimated how good it would feel, how much it would serve you in your life, to sprinkle these throughout the day.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe if you want to play right now, Steph, I'll walk you through the thing.
Sure.
Right. So if you remember, a time where it was a different iteration of stuff, where you would have thought some of the stuff was dumb and stupid and a waste of time. And you sort of fly over, to today, to where you have the realization, wow, I really underestimated how good it would feel in my body and in my life to sprinkle in some of these simple body practices. Like, what do you notice in your body as you connect to, wow, I really underestimate that. I love that now. I enjoy that now. That serves me so much in my life now. What do you connect to energetically, emotionally?
It's less of a soft, gentle Gigi style, wow, this is so nice, and more of a like, thank God. Thank God. These are tools so that twice that I can think of that I've employed these tools in like dire in the moment circumstances. Where once when I was having a panic attack, and once when I was getting, pretty recently actually, an ocular migraine. I get these migraines that give me a big blind spot in my eye. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to feel my bum or look at an object. Like the panic attack was the one that was the most, I was floored. I was floored with the difference in my reaction. The response in my body was loving and helpful and soothing instead of revving and dramatic and increasing the challenges my nervous system was experiencing in those moments.
Mm-hmm. Right? So thank God is your experience as you reflect on that.
And like, I can do this, like there's tools I can use to do things that were hard for me before. I still am subject to these mini revelations where I'm like, oh, that's a thing I could do now because I can feel my feelings and cope with what might come up. That's a conversation I can have. That's a place I could go in the dark and the mystery,
You just said a whole slew of things that all are very impactful. That's a thing I can do now. That's a conversation I can have now. Right? There's a thing I can do right now to support myself. So that connects me to like a deep belief and inner feeling of a sense of agency. Right? I don't have to cut off from different parts of my life thinking that I don't have it in me to cope with that.
Yeah.
Right? And like when you start feeling and believing that you can cope with certain things, because I find that most people who are struggling share with us, like, I struggle with things that are kind of seemingly like basic things, right? Mm-hmm. And then of course, then they're hard on themselves about that too. And as people build their capacity to use these tools in those moments, they come back and they're like, oh yeah, I was like dreaming about what job I could go for next. Or actually got the dream job that I was too afraid to even imagine was possible. So it's like you build these skills to be able to do and be with the things that, maybe you deem as pretty simple, everyday things you would like to feel competent and capable in. But then that's not the end. That's not the top limit. That just gets you this foundation now where the whole, the sky is the limit. Yeah. You get to dream so much bigger once you get to this level of, I feel that I can be with some basic everyday life ups and downs. I can be with disappointment. I can be with some of these things I'm afraid they might happen. And I know I can be with that. And then all of a sudden,
it opens up so much because there's so much that we spend our lives hiding from because we've had pain or disconnection or whatever it was. So dreaming the dream, imagining the thing is just sort of inconceivable. And this has opened up some kind of new conceivability.
Yeah. Right? And so how this topic came to be is yesterday we had our friend Jordan Gray on the podcast. And we talked about so many fun things. And one of the things that struck me was watching Jordan light up, physically light up, in his face and energetically, when he shared how he underestimated how much he valued certain things he has now in his life, or he underestimated how good it would feel to experience something that he experiences with his wife. And I saw this, it's like blood flowing up to the face, like someone becoming more enlivened. And he's a pretty enlivened guy anyways. But I just felt like something shifts when he talks about, he acknowledges how much he underestimated the need for something or the value of something or how good something feels. And I was like, wow, imagine if we could reflect on our lives and look back at a time where we either didn't allow ourselves to believe that was possible for ourselves. So we didn't even allow ourselves to want it or desire it, or we made it wrong to want that thing. Or, you know, it just didn't present. So it didn't seem like it was an option to have that experience. And then to fast forward and see, I have done some things that have put me in a position to get to experience something new and something different. And I am pleasantly surprised at how delightful this is. And that in itself, I feel like is a huge win, just to intellectually have that understanding. Like, I'm pleasantly surprised at this thing that I never thought was possible, or I never realized I thought it was important, or I never gave myself permission to really want it and to have it. And then the next layer that excites me most is like, how does it feel? How does it feel in the body now to feel how delightful that is? To know you have this, or you have this in abundance in your life, or you've created the opportunity to experience this more often in your life. Like, how does it feel to know that, to like be in it? And I don't know, for me, I love seeing people lit up. And so I'm always watching what lights people up. And I'm like, there's something in that. What if we all practiced accessing those moments and living in them a little bit longer? How would that impact us? That's always my curiosity.
I love it. Yeah, there's something in there for me about the things we can't conceive of being possible, and creating space for being creative about that, like consciously dreaming or consciously comparing, looking around at what other people have and noticing where you feel a twinge of either joy or envy, or the idea that it's impossible or impossible for you, or only possible for them, or only possible for certain types of people that you don't deem yourself to be. Mm-hmm. There's gold in there for things that you want, what might light you up if you can imagine that it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I remember a time where, like right now, I think I underestimated how amazing it would feel to do work that I absolutely love. Because I didn't grow up with that conditioning. I grew up with conditioning of like, if you have a well-paid job and you have good job security and you have potential job advancement opportunities, you have hit the jackpot. So that was what was like given to me in mind thoughts. But then I was like, and now I have it. I worked freaking hard for it. And my insides feel like they're dying. Like, what is actually happening here? And like, I'm going to fast forward through like many years it took me to work that all out and give myself permission to explore what was more true for me. But now when I wake up every morning and I love what I do. When people ask me like, are you excited for your vacation? I'm like, yes, I'm excited for my vacation. But a lot of people ask from the energy of like, oh my God, thank God it's my vacation soon, right? Or, oh God, tomorrow's Monday again, right? And like, I've been there. I know that feeling. I know that not everyone has the freedom and luxury in the same way to move out of that situation as quickly as they would like, or maybe they don't even think they have the possibility to move out of that. But I underestimated how much it would impact me emotionally, mentally, energetically, to work towards putting myself in a situation where I got to do work that was much more aligned for me. And so now when I think about, I get to do work every day that doesn't feel like work. I have so much fun doing it. I'm like, oh, like there's that feeling like, oh, that's so nice. Like there's an inside soft, fluttering feeling.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Were you able to conceive of the components of that, or was it just all an unexpected I mean, I remember your fears about going out on your own. Were you able to anticipate in advance any of this, or was it all just a surprise?
So when you say, was I able to conceive of the components, do you mean like, did I have a sense of what I needed to do to make it happen? Or like, could I sense which components would feel really good if I got to that place?
Second one. Yeah.
I only allowed myself, or maybe knew how at the time, to get to that place from a very heady, let me think about it and land on it for about 3 seconds. Like, oh, that would be nice. Oh, that would be really nice if I could, work from home and like be home with the kids more. Like I remember Shay asking me, like, what is your dream job? Like, how would your life look? And it was a bit of a heart answer, probably more of a head answer of like, yeah, I could imagine that being nice, but I don't think I let myself really feel in the body how nice it could potentially be to really live that reality, because I felt so far from that reality.
Yeah.
Right? Like it seemed like a waste of time and confusing to spend very much time there. And probably like potentially a landmine for tons of disappointment. So why go there? However, one thing I think that really supported me in the process and has really worked in my favor in different areas of my life is my willingness to allow people to hold a vision for me that I could not fully connect to yet. Like, I'm like, I have no idea how this would pan out ever. Like,
that's exactly a phrase that before I would have been like, what is that? Shut up, hold a vision. And now I'm like, oh, that's so valuable. So nice.
Yeah, like for someone to say, I see this in you. I see in you the ability to create that, to make that happen. I see that you're worthy of that. That type of joy and alignment, that you're letting yourself just a tiny bit go there. And it's almost like she knew I didn't yet hold the vision for myself that it was possible. And she's like, I don't care whether you see it or not, I see it. And I'm going to hold it for you. Just quietly over here doing my own thing. And somewhere along the line, I was willing to allow people to do that for me and not dismiss it like, oh, you're nuts. Right? Or yeah, say your thing, but I don't know. You don't know what you're talking about. I allowed it just to be.
It's really big. That sounds like maybe a little thing, but it's so big because it means that you're open to possibility where you weren't before, and you're being open to being open, noticing when it's like, I'm not there yet, but I agree that exists in the universe and that it's possible. Thank you for holding that for me before I can.
Yes. And I love when we work with people because we want to just meet people where they're at. We're not like, hey, you need to be able to hold this vision for yourself. And if not, something's wrong with you, right? So we'll work with people and someone will share, oh, like maybe part of me has a desire for this. And we'll say, hey, let's just try it out. Let's just say it out loud in your own words, own that vision and see what happens. And for some people, they will formulate a vision, they'll say it out loud, and immediately their body will give them all the signs of, yes, this is truth. This lands, right? I believe it. And for other people, they're like, I believe it for about 3 seconds. It feels good, like up to here. And then this other voice comes in, and we like to call the yeah, but voice, right? Yeah, but what about this, right? Or, well, I don't know if I can connect to that desire. So then our next question tends to be like, would you be open to the idea that you might be able to connect to that desire one day, right? We put all the possibility language in there that we can until when the person says it out loud, they're like, oh yeah, that feels true. That feels right. And their system settles with it. And all of a sudden they walk away with hope and a vision. Even though it might not be that You know, like it might not be the one they started off trying to be connected to, but this is not about forcing yourself to connect to a vision that doesn't feel true for you yet. It's learning to discover, like, what is the version of this vision that feels true and accessible for me right now?
Yeah.
That my body doesn't protest to this.
Right.
Right? Because when my body doesn't protest to this, I can actually take some action towards this. But if my body's protesting against this vision and this belief, right? Because maybe it's scared, maybe it doesn't believe it's possible yet, then like it's really hard to convince ourselves on a sustainable basis to like keep doing the things that support it.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're like open to the idea of one day being open to something better for yourself, all of a sudden you're like, oh, maybe I will do that tiny thing.
Yeah. It's really exciting, those tiny things. I love it when you walk me through, like, say I'm in a mood or a funk or whatever, and I'm just like, I don't know, meh. And you'll walk me through something that will inevitably be helpful. And I'll end up with some nugget that I didn't expect. You know, it'll be like, oh, there is something that I can do. There's some movement I can make. And there is actually something that would feel good to do, which I was, you know, I came in here intent on the idea that there would not be. But here it is. And it's something unexpected, and it's going to lead me somewhere unexpected. You know, it yields something, some direction, some tangible direction that I wouldn't have gone otherwise. And that's like exciting.
Yeah. And I think like one like pathway, because it's not magic, like I'm not casting spells on you or something, but I think there's a common thread in like whatever mood, your funk you're bringing. I think I do my best to bring the energy of it's okay. It's okay if you feel that way right now. It's okay if you cannot fathom a single thing you want to do about this, right? Or can do about this. And then from there, like, I feel like people's systems settle. They're like, oh, it's okay. Well, in that case, and then once you're in that state, there's more room for possibility.
Yeah. And creativity.
But most of us, instead of when we're in a funk and a mood, we've been conditioned to be hard on ourselves. So we add in thoughts and sayings and other things that dysregulate us more and make it even harder to see and feel possibility, and make it even harder to move towards something that is better feeling, right? Because of that strong inner critic.
Yeah. I think I underestimated the like tangible difference of settling a nervous system. Like it can go from like all I see is blackness in a cage feeling to just like, oh, peaceful world of possibilities. That like that's incredible. It's almost visual. It's so strong.
Yeah. I think I underestimated how nice, I don't know, nice is sort of like a blah word, but how pleasant, how like, I don't know, maybe a better descriptive word will come, like, but what it feels like and how much I appreciate being able to, like, my life is still busy. I still have 2 kids who are in sports all over town. I still have a business. I'm still solo parenting half the time. Like, there hasn't been much taken off my plate in that sense. But like, I think I underestimated how good it would feel to be able to do the things that need to be tended to, that because I value them, in a way that feels so much more peaceful and easeful. And that I'm not laying in bed at the end of the day wondering what the F happened today. Like, there's more presence, there's more enjoyment throughout the day. Still have just as many things to do, but it feels so different. Like, my life feels different. The other day I just wrapped up year 2 of a 3-year training. And we were asked to reflect on, like, who were you 2 years ago? Where were you? Where are you now? And it made me realize, like, oh, a lot has changed in 2 years. Like, tons has changed. I have done a lot, accomplished a lot, shifted and grown a lot. I thought, how did that happen? How did that happen in such an easeful way? What? And I think it's because I underestimated how much more capacity it would give me to practice these little things.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. And I managed to practice these little things while, like, if I just look back, I'm like, okay, I finished 2 years of a 3-year program. My kids are going through middle school and high school that just take a little bit of a different kind of parenting style and just learning them all over again in a new stage of development. Just you and I, like, you know, this podcast was born like just over 2 years ago, right? Like from really nothing, just an idea, to 100 and something episodes later. We created the Priming the Body for Peace program. Like all of that was within the last 2 years. And that's like coming off of the tail end of COVID, right? Like everyone's sort of just figuring themselves out again. Quitting my job was part of, you know, that sort of last 3-year window-ish. A new relationship. And how did I do all that?
And long COVID. You've been busy.
Yes, and long COVID. That was horrible.
Yeah.
It's because of
moving.
And
Good
moving.
Lord.
I moved. I did move. What the heck?
Yeah.
All because like this capacity has been slowly, quietly building behind the scenes. Because some people are good at this. I haven't been good at it. I don't imagine, at least at this point in my life, I'm going to invest the practice it takes to become good at this right now in this season of my life, which is I don't dedicate like an hour or two to all these wonderful practices that could be great for myself in my life. I don't like to say I don't have time. It's just in the time that I have, that's not where I'm choosing to dedicate the time. But what I am really good at is to, like, for example, right now I'm using my left hand and I'm pushing against my leg and I can feel that. And my right hand is squishing a squishy ball into my right knee and I can feel that. And even as I tell you what my hands are doing, I notice that my breath deepens. That's what I'm good at. I'm good at like, well, I'm recording a podcast right now, but I can still practice this. And like that all goes in the bank.
Yeah.
And then that's what helps sort of keep my head way above water for the last 2 years, right? More than 2 years. But if I'm just looking at the last 2 years, like that's how I've been able to do these things that were important to me in a way that hasn't made me crash.
Yeah.
And has felt good during.
Yeah. Underestimating the capacity that I've been able to build, I think, is definitely something. I've got a pretty big capacity generally, but it's like little nooks and crannies of my brain, heart, spirit were like closed for business and they're opening now, you know? And
we're closed for business. Gosh, I was closed for business too in many areas for a while.
Right? Yep. And that's okay. Weird, unexpected shifts. Like, I remember when I started doing, maybe it was in the first 2 or 3 years of conscious relationship training and going deeper in meditation and spirituality and connecting myself in ways that I hadn't before. I unexpectedly stopped being afraid of the dark and being afraid of being in swimming pools by myself. It just was gone. Like that visceral fear feeling, just gone. Can't explain that. Little things like technological troubles that I've had that I've not been able to figure out whatever problem for years. It's just like, oh, obviously this is the answer. How did I not see this? I have a Cuisinart I've had for 2 years. I figured one of the attachments was broken. And then one day I was just like, oh, no, it goes in this other way. And now it works. And now I have a whole new Cuisinart life. It opens up things really unexpectedly.
A whole new Cuisinart life. Yeah, well, I think as we build nervous system capacity, our ability to be present and see grows, changes, our ability to see and feel and believe in our own capacity changes. Right. So definitely there, like I have had a big fear of bugs and insects and things. And I'm not going to say I love them. Like I'm not at that place. And I do notice I don't freak out in the same way. I can actually sit and feel my butt and look at it and be like, what's next? What do I do next? Right. Whereas like I will tell you, like my old go-to, and this started from when I was a teenager, I think. And when you and I were teenagers, we had the white pages and the yellow pages, right? These thick, huge phone books. And immediately, if I saw a bug of some sort on the ground, I would run to grab the yellow pages and stand somewhere up high and like chuck it on. And then I couldn't even go near it. It just stayed there, sometimes for weeks.
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
And that was how I dealt with life.
Yep. Very relatable.
And that has changed over time. Right? This is also interesting though. Like, so this all sounds lovely. Oh, you build capacity and then you feel better. Everything's easier. Well, like that's not always how it goes either. There's also this. I'm going to share a story of the dentist. And a client recently shared this similar experience and we had a good laugh about it. I'm like, yeah, holy crap. Do you remember that in the chair? Like what was happening? So I've always prided myself on like, I'm brave in the dentist chair. Like I'm fine at the dentist, right? I don't get all like scared and whatever, right? Not that it's bad to get scared, but I just felt like, it doesn't really impact me either way. And then as I did more of this work and like connected more to feeling and senses and energy and sensation, I remember a period of time where I'm like, this is horrible. I can hear everything. I can feel everything, right? Yeah. Like I can feel like the instruments in my mouth. I can feel which areas of my body are tensing. I can feel where the butterflies are. And I was like, what is happening to me? I was so brave before. Like, what has happened to me now? Yeah. And it occurred to me, I'm like, oh, my body's awake now. I'm awake to my body now. That's what's happening. Right? Because I was like, this never seemed so long before. Why does it seem like we're on the 5th hour now of torture?
Forever.
Right? So I was like, let me experiment. Let me push my heels into the chair and see how that feels. Let me dig my elbows in a little bit more into the arms of the thing. Let me feel my back. Right? Let me look at something, like use my eyes. And like I discovered that it feels really good for me to have my arms over my body and then I squeeze my hands. Something about the pressure gives me enough proprioceptive input, like feeling input in my body, that it disperses some of the other feeling things that aren't as pleasant. Or I'd practice like feeling the thing that doesn't feel so pleasant and then tapping out of that and dipping into some part of my body that doesn't feel that way. And I was like, oh, this isn't so bad after all. Right? So, yeah. I'm like, oh, these things, I underestimated many things. I underestimated how yucky it could feel once you come back into your body. I underestimated how in those moments you can like go back to these simple tools and bring more pleasantness to some of that discomfort. So now I just feel like there's like, I don't want to say any of us want to go through hard things, but we will go through hard things. And I know now that no matter what I go through, I have these to lean on.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
If you want to be of the world, like that's going to be really important. What you just described in the dentist chair, I think a very natural response would have been for you to try to dissociate, right? But you're in your body and you're talking about wanting to stay there. And this is so important if you want to be in the world and not floating on top of it or dissociated from it. If you're learning slowly how to be in the world, it's feeling something else. It's not thinking about something else, maybe focusing. I know that can be kind of a confusing, thinking and focusing, feeling like the same thing, but feeling something different with your body while something in another part of your body is not feeling so nice is a very different experience. I'm thinking of my 6-package laser hair removal finished as I woke to my body.
Great.
Wow, what a difference. I used to go to those appointments. I remember I'm listening to death metal. I'm going to get my hairs lasered off my body. Like it felt good. I remember it feeling good. Like I remember going there once and being like, it'll be a relief to have the nice, horrible snapping pain feeling of the laser. And the last session coincided with a different technician who's like 3 times more thorough than the other ones. And it was awful. I was like, is this what this has felt like the entire time? I cannot believe it. Or maybe this is TMI, but pap smears. I used to barely notice they were happening. And now I'm like, this is all very unpleasant.
I noticed that too, actually. I noticed that too. I'm like, what is happening?
Wow. Do you have some new horrible device that you're using? No? Okay. Just noticing, just feeling, and having tools to deal with that, right? It would have been so neat. I'm not going to book another laser appointment, but it would be neat to be like, oh, what would happen if I was focusing on different parts of my body instead of just breathing through it, which is just dissociating and trying to leave my body, which is a helpful tool sometimes. But again, if you want to be in and of the world and feel more connected in your life and your relationships, it's a different train.
Well, I really like that you keep repeating that phrase. If you want to be in and of the world, like meaning like fully a full participant, right, to your life, and a curator and a creator and a co-creator in your life, then we need to be aware of what's happening. And like, so I contrast it to a time where I was, completely unaware, to aware and push through, to aware that this is not pleasant, or there's elements not pleasant, and there's things I can focus on and shift focus to and from that support my system, so that while I'm going through something that's not super pleasant, I feel I have a sense of agency, right? And this reminds me of like, why I ended up staying way too long in a lot of situations, in jobs, in relationships. And I would say one of them is I was so disconnected to feeling. I couldn't feel how bad I actually felt. I might have intellectually known that this didn't feel good. I got a tickle. But I wasn't fully aware. I wasn't fully feeling it on a daily basis throughout the day, how not okay these situations were. And it makes sense. If you don't feel that you're skillful in that area, you're not going to want to feel those things, right? Or if they're so super overwhelming, they just push you into that nervous system state where it's not even a question of choice of whether you stay connected or not, right? And so growing my ability to feel and be present to, this isn't ideal right now. This doesn't feel great, but I know that it's happening, or I know that I've chosen it, or I know that I've chosen to not yet get out of it. And this is how I can make it better for me while I'm still here. This is what I can do to support myself while I figure out what my exit plan is and put those pieces in motion. That feels so much more empowering to me than either disassociating completely and not even allowing myself into the realm of like, does this feel okay for me? Or feeling how yucky feels and shutting it down and pretending that I don't want something different. And this is not a shaming thing, right? If you find yourself in any of those places, it all makes sense, right? But what we're saying is we hold a vision that something else is possible for you if you're open to it, if you want, if it matters to you, right? That you could grow that nervous system capacity to be present to just enough for you to like feel the things that are necessary for you to feel to make the next informed and supportive choices for your life. Yeah. Right. And we're not saying like you have to like dive in and like feel it all right away and make your choices right away. But how might it be to know that that could be possible for you? Right? More present moment awareness, more engagement in your life, more of a sense of agency. Right?
When you want it, right? You don't have to have it all the time. You can have it when you want it. You can dissociate.
Sometimes I don't want it. Totally. Sometimes I don't want it.
Yeah. Something that you said reminded me of the value of permission. I underestimated the impact on me of permission. I felt like I don't need anyone's permission. Like I do what I want, and then someone's like, I trust you. It's okay to feel sad. I'm like, oh my God, it is. I didn't know. And permission for so many things, permission to, I'm thinking about boundaries, when we're trying to establish boundaries and we're feeling like, oh, if somebody's in conflict with my boundaries, is something wrong with one of us? And it's like, no, actually, we are both allowed to have feelings, permission to both exist, in ways that I was so fortified against. And it's very opening, like in a creative self-authoring kind of a space.
Yeah. We hear that a lot. People who say to us after a call, I didn't realize how much I needed permission to feel this way, to want this thing, to not do this thing, to do this thing. And they're like, the moment you said it was okay to feel this way, it was okay to want that thing, it was okay to say no to this other thing, I noticed a total shift in my body.
Yeah. Even they can be telling us like, I know it's okay to want this thing, but these are just words. And then we're like, yes. And stopping to feel that in your body. Like there's so many things that we intellectually know that we have not brought down into the body. And the value of that is I very underestimated.
Very underestimated. I think very underestimated. I think what I very underestimated when I look at our group calls, I very underestimated the power. Like we just sort of played and discovered what we feel like works really well for us. And then eventually we're like, hey, let's see who's open to try and see if they feel the same things and they notice changes in the same way. I don't want to devalue the things that you and I say to people on a call, but I also feel like it's not really about what we say. I think something that's really magical is that we really value helping people slow things down enough to notice how the words that come out of their mouth feel when they say them. And like what happens if you tweak the words just a little bit? What happens instead of sharing 3 sentences at one time, you share just one, and track what happens in your body. And like people are always wildly surprised at the discoveries that they have after a simple practice like that. Right? I remember calls where people are like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I should do in this situation. I feel totally conflicted. There's this side and there's this side and there's this side. And we're like, okay, well, how about you say this piece and just really own that piece. Say that out loud, feel your butt as you say it. Have a look at someone here on the screen, right? What do you notice? And then we'll say, well, what other part exists? Say a sentence from that part. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, it's clear now. Thank you. I'm good. Or even, I feel more okay in my confusion.
Yeah. Yeah. I still don't know. And that feels okay.
Yeah. And that feels really great, to feel spaciousness in the fact that I don't know the answer yet. And that's okay. I don't actually feel tight everywhere. So I think I underestimated the value of helping people practice that.
Yeah. Saying less has been a huge gift. I remember feeling at some point like, I think when I was writing movie synopsises and had to cram them into a tweet, when a tweet was however many short characters, that was really valuable. And then extrapolating that into life and relationship and, self-expression, choosing fewer words that are more true, like slowing down and discovering what words are actually present in lieu of the storm in my mind, which is a storm of many, many words. I undervalued a few words.
I can also be a storm of many, many words. And we've worked with lots of people who also can be a storm of many, many words. And I think, I think of one particular situation, which I'm sure you remember when I bring the details back. But it was years ago now, working in a group setting, right? And I asked someone, and we had enough rapport, right? Like, I'm not just going to say this to someone out of nowhere, and we have no safety and rapport with each other. And there's enough context where it's fitting, right? She didn't love it at the time. I think she was actually pissed with me and told me that. But I felt that it was okay. It was a risk I was willing to take in service.
It was an important expression of emotions, which is honesty, which is in service. Yeah.
Right? I felt that it would be in service to this person's growth and healing. And I think I said to her, please stop talking. Because there was a part of me that really just wanted to support her and like feeling what was happening. Right. And of course, there's many ways you try to support someone to get to that before we get to more abrupt measures. And in that moment, I was like, I could just let this go. Like, she's obviously like not willing to go to that place. Like, just let it go, whatever. But there was some like gut intuition that was like, no, I think this is important. And I'm okay if she's mad at me. I'm doing this from a place of respect and integrity and care. And if she's upset with me, I'm happy to talk it out with her. Right.
Yes.
And yes,
this was one of my favorite moments in life. And I wish everyone could have seen it. And I bet now, if we had that on film, she'd be like, please let the world see this, because Gigi, you went, shut up, shut up, shut up. It was incredible. And this is one of the things I undervalued, because it's not just like, G suddenly started shrieking, shut up. It was like after a very long established pattern of the same thing happening, and she would identify this, like, oh, I feel like I'm going on. And everybody was feeling like that, because that is what was happening. And in those opportunities in our lives, it's so common for us to just go, okay, like, no, I understand. Like, it makes sense. Like, yeah, we'll just keep doing this. When in fact, shut up, shut up, shut up is so much more impactful. She can from that deduce the emotional content of like, oh, wow, I'm having an impact. There's an impact here that I don't understand. And we really can't understand those impacts when the emotions are pulled out of it in favor of like being polite or sensitive or gentle, which, to be clear, is called for a lot of the time. And often the injection of our emotions is the most helpful truth that we can provide. And I completely underestimated that for decades.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Like, it was a powerful moment. It was like, of course, like, I don't walk around on the regular telling anybody to shut up. Like, that's just not my style.
If I had said it, it would not have been impactful,
Right. And this person, at some point was able to come back and say, that was so impactful in my life, that moment. That like I was pissed at you for at the time. I felt very misunderstood. And now I see why you did it, why it was necessary, like what it opened up for me in my life. Right. And like the cycle it started to help completely shift. And that was around can we learn that less words can be better and more supportive for our healing and growth?
Yes.
Right. And I think another thing I underestimated, and we saw this a lot, I think, with Shay too, watching her facilitate. And she had sort of forewarned us, you know, as a mentor to us, like when you facilitate, people are going to be pissed at you. Like you're going to trigger up stuff for people that they're going to love you one minute and hate you another. And I was like, what? I don't want anyone to hate me. But anyways, like what I underestimated is the value when you have co-created a healthy, safe relationship with someone. You have invested the time to do that, to learn someone, to let them learn you. That in that relationship now becomes so powerful. And like most of the time we are infusing it with so much healing energy. And I see you and I support you and I'm here for you. And I see the goodness in you, right? And then when that person can also say, and what you're doing right now, I see is out of integrity to what you claim to value. Like, so what I mean is when someone you now have learned to trust and respect also calls you out. Like, I think I underestimated the value of that. Like, I was just so allergic to being called out at all by anyone that I didn't realize in my mind and my body that is such a reparative moment. Because if you really look at like the most attuned supportive parenting is I love you. I see the goodness in you. I'm here to support you. I'm your cheerleader. And I'm going to call out the things that need to be called out so I can guide you well, right? So that you're not living in some fantasy land that's not reality. And I'm going to call you out because I see that you have capacity to be with this, and I will add extra capacity if you need it. I see your ability to grow from this, right? I believe in you enough that you can take this and open up something new for yourself, right? It's from this place of love. Like I want to be able to be honest with you. And I think I underestimated the value of like when you work with a mentor or a coach or anyone who you just respect. Like I used to think, because I had so much childhood wounding around being criticized, right? I used to think like, oh, I just want them to like me and say nice things to me. And I needed an abundance of that. But with every teacher, I could tell when they sensed, oh, the foundation is here. Right? There's trust here. There's a stronger self-identity here. I think they're ready to like hold the next kernel of truth that might be uncomfortable sometimes. And it would be a disservice of me to not give that to them.
Yeah.
And I think I undervalued that. I underestimated that as a student receiving and as a teacher giving. I used to feel like, oh, as a teacher, as a guide, as a coach, I'm just here to lift people up. Right? And I think I just wasn't aware that I had my own way of gently like bringing awareness to things that were hard to see. Like I did it, but maybe, I don't know, I wasn't super aware of what was happening. It was just more intuitive at the time. But now it's more of like this full body knowing, oh, there's so much value in that.
Yeah. Sort of in that vein of readiness to hold something, I undervalued timing. I overvalued what I viewed to be correct information. As long as someone can receive from me all of the correct information, the timing won't matter, you know? And I remember Shay once telling me that she thought I was ready to hear something. And like she sat me down and was like, I think you're ready to hear this. And it was about my partner being like wildly inappropriate partner for me, which I was blind to and would not have been ready to hear. And when she said it, it was like, oh, like my mind exploded with obviousness. Like, oh yes, because I'm ready to hear it, you know?
Yeah.
And the futility that I used to bash my head against the brick wall of why isn't somebody hearing or implementing or whatever it is, this thing that I deem to be correct and necessary. And the readiness is not there. And the magical flow that comes from readiness and timing and embodied knowing of when it's time.
Yes. Yes. That makes me think too, like, you know, if you are familiar with attachment styles, like I would say I had a healthy dose, an abundant dose of anxious attachment in me for a long, long time. And then, you know, sometimes that show up as some version of avoidant, and we dance between the two. But like, where was I going with this? I just always felt the need. I would either go from, I'm not saying anything because I don't want to look like the mean partner, right? And not be liked, to, I feel it, so I must say it immediately, especially after I learned like, oh, vulnerability, it's so important, so helpful. Like, let's authentically relate to each other, which I thought meant say everything you feel in the moment in real time.
Which at some point it does mean that, and then later it doesn't.
Right. And at that point, I think I underestimated the value of timing.
Yeah.
Right. And permission from the other person, that they have capacity and desire to listen and hold and receive whatever you're bringing. What else is right here? There's something else about, I definitely underestimated how different it would feel for me, but also the impact on the other person. And then also relationally, how different and good it feels to express something that doesn't feel good for me exactly that way, instead of as criticism or blame in the other person, or like as shock, like, what the hell is wrong with you kind of energy.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like I can actually get so many of my needs met, and we can still really like each other if I just tell you what doesn't feel good for me and what would feel better without making you wrong. What?
It's that launching pad feeling. I was just, before this call, I was editing yesterday's or whenever's podcast, and you said something about, we were talking about things being bad or wrong, establishing a boundary that butts up against somebody else's. One of us must be bad or wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were like, and neither of those feels good. And it's obviously true. Neither of those feels good. They both feel like that black cage trap feeling that I've talked about already today. Whereas the just clearly describing what you're feeling and what doesn't feel good, just in these really non-attached terms. It's just a noticing. It's an exercise in noticing out loud. It feels like that springboard feeling, that world of possibilities. There's none of that cagey, creepy feeling.
Yes, it is. It's a springboard of possibility. Like, I have now shared what doesn't feel good for me and what could feel better. And it's almost like we've gathered around together to be like, okay, and what now? Right? Yeah. It isn't we've gathered around with all of our swords and weapons to go at it with each other. And it's such a different feeling. I definitely underestimated how pleasant and like how much it also encourages me to keep doing it. Yeah. I'm like, oh, I don't want to hold back the things that don't feel good, because like this actually creates like, it's generative. I like this word that you use. It's generative of like something good between us happens when I share with you what doesn't feel good for me, and I share with you what would feel better. And then that lands in a much more pleasant way for you, and we create the next thing together. Yeah. Wow. That feels good.
I underestimated how possible that is for me. That's totally a thing that I would have been like, oh, well, maybe nice, sweet darlings like Gigi can do that sort of thing. But I come with a knife. Not true. You know, that's also very possible for me.
Practicing the same things, actually, even.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This one was a good one. I think you had a visceral reaction to this and an out loud reaction when I said this one earlier. I think I underestimated how peaceful. I think peaceful is a good word. Like how peaceful it feels to have clarity from someone, honesty from someone. Whereas in the past, I overestimated. I put too much value on being chosen by someone in their words. I just wanted to be chosen by them. I just wanted them to say the words in whatever form that I would compute to meaning they're choosing me. I didn't actually make assessments of do their actions consistently match those words? And to be with someone now where there's so much clarity in where they're at, how they feel, what they want, what the vision is. I think even if they were to say, this is not where I want to be, I'd be like, okay, that would hurt me. I would feel sad because that doesn't match with what I want and desire. And there'd be this part that's relieved, okay, so now all I need to do is feel my disappointment, sadness about this and grieve that and grieve this vision I had and hope that I had. But it's clear.
Yeah. And
it's
true.
Totally clear and true.
Yeah.
And I know what I know what I'm sitting with, dealing with. Whereas being around people who are one moment this and another moment that. And I had so much compassion for it, but I was going nuts.
Yeah.
Internally, it was like a tornado inside all the time. There's no place for me to settle and land on but what was true yesterday appears to not be true today. And also shifts 3 days from now. I don't know what to be with that. And this is not shaming the other person. It's really for me to start knowing does this feel peaceful for my body? Is this a dance I am prepared to do with someone and I feel resourced to do with someone and I want to do with someone long term? And if it's not, it's me honoring myself to say I need to exit, right? Instead of making them wrong and forcing them to change and trying to just take out every ounce of clarity I could get when the clarity was that the clarity isn't there, right?
Significant.
Yes, very significant. And I spent too much time, I think, making this person wrong, which that doesn't serve anybody. Instead of just coming back to myself of this doesn't feel good for me. It's very likely it could feel fine for somebody else or fine for somebody else for a while, right? And I know this is a good-hearted person. They're not a bad person. But I think I underestimated how much better life could get for me when I become a stand for myself of what feels good for me and what doesn't. And instead of me trying to wait around for your answers, for me to seek clarity from me and then be open to clarity from you and then see that no clarity is clarity.
That's huge. Yeah. I definitely underestimated. It's something to do with actions and words and clarity and unclarity like you're describing. I think I overvalued words and promises while undervaluing action and demonstration. And that feels linked to what you were just describing, the clarity. It's so uncomfortable to know that lack of clarity is the clarity, because it's well, no, but I just want to know. I just want the answer. Why can't they just tell me and know? And why can't I predict the entire future? So annoying. But the lack of clarity is so clear. So clear. It just looks like something we don't want to look at. So
yeah, so a little invitation for you to notice maybe what you overestimated the value of and underestimated the value of, and maybe spending some time delighting in the things you realize now you really value and have created a situation where you have the opportunity to have more of that in your life, right? How does it feel in your body to acknowledge I'm at a place now where I value this deeply, and I've made shifts in my life so that I can experience it.
So doable.
Right? I had to walk away from something and someone I never thought I would be able to walk away from. And it felt horrendously awful for a long time, but also it felt true in what was needed, so that I could experience this that feels so blissful and lovely and exciting and generative and healing and all the amazing things that I never thought was possible because I was trying to squeeze it all out from a situation that didn't have it.
Yeah.
And so
those feelings. So I think we could like whittle this down to feelings of contraction or expansion. Like, I'm thinking of the people who are listening who haven't yet connected with these sensations in their body and don't know how to answer the question of like what feels true or good. You can look at it through this lens of imagining and noticing whether you feel contracted or expansive, right? And if you're working through all of the options of what feels not necessarily possible, like in a doable way, but like in your realm of able to imagine, if all that's in there feels contracting, there's more to discover, right? There is something that will feel expansive. You just haven't found it yet, or you haven't let your mind roam in these realms of imagining because it's scary or new or unknown. And so like going out and looking for that, this is a great place to poll people for like what's possible, instead of polling people for like, am I crazy? Am I reasonable? Be like, what kind of dreams can a person have? What are some dreams you have? What do you vision for life and relationship and love and how you feel every day?
Oh yeah. Open yourself to new ideas and possibility, right? Looking for evidence of the opposite, I think, is a really great activity. There's
and if you can move toward one tiny thing even that feels expansive, the more of those expansive moments you accumulate, like suddenly you're then living a life that feels expansive and bigger than you could have imagined.
Yes. I think a way also to play with this is sometimes we feel a bit blocked to imagining good stuff for ourselves for a good reason. So you could play with it in this way, like choose someone who you deeply love and care about. You want the best for them. And imagine them having this thing. And how does that feel, feeling that, right? How do you imagine they would feel getting to experience that, noticing for contractions and openings, right? A lifting of energy or like a dampening of energy. And also whether you're going at it through that route or you're just imagining straight directly for yourself. I think there's also like value in paying attention to the nuance. You might notice there was a split second of a lifting energy. And then immediately it was this heavy drop in the stomach and I was constricted. Well, that's good information, right? Or it was very constricted at the very beginning. And then as I sat with that imagination a little bit longer, something began to soften. And then a slight smile came on my face, right? Those are all like neat things to notice because they give you lots of information, right? I think one thing we might underestimate is the value of like staying with something for a period of time and not making the initial whatever you notice mean anything in particular, but just notice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gigi. Anything else you want to say before we do a closing practice?
What else do I want to say? I underestimate how nice it is. I don't underestimate it now, but there was a time, remember like how delighted we were? I think this is a good way also to access what we underestimate is what delights you. What do you discover delights you? It delights me that we can work together, and working together does not feel like hard work. It doesn't feel strenuous, right? It somehow just flows and works. And like, we're obviously not going to have this dynamic with every person, but like, what might it be like to hold the vision that like that kind of dynamic could exist with somebody?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then to appreciate it, right? We started this episode talking about bringing appreciation, like embodied appreciation to these moments. So like noticing where in life you have things that feel really good. That's a wonderful example because it's so good and easy. And I have this habit now, certainly not an old habit, of only letting good things into my life that feel good whenever possible. So then you can get into like a rut of goodness, I'm going to call it, and not notice like, oh God, I worked really hard to arrange that because it feels good. And it's in those moments of, I think this is the Buddhist idea of life as suffering, right? When I have to work in any other capacity where there's any crunchiness or anything, I'm like, oh my God, no, this is not the thing. It's the Gigi. Like it's easy and free feeling. Like it's just really completely easy and good feeling.
Yeah.
Boy.
And like it changes the bar, right?
Yes.
Like the bar, like what's that saying? But like the bar is raised, like, you know, in terms of how I want to feel when I collaborate with someone.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that we can't always control, we don't always have ultimate control over who we end up working with. Some people are going to have more agency and control over that than others. But at the very least, it's like an awareness that you can carry forward with you of like, within my powers, I'm going to create a situation where I am more likely to be working with someone where in our dynamic, I get to feel this.
Yeah.
Right. Or it might even be, I'm going to limit the amount of time and experience I have working with people where it doesn't feel like this. Yeah. Right. Or while I work with people where it doesn't feel like this kind of flow, I'm going to bring in tools that support my nervous system so that that experience is more pleasant, because we can't change every situation. We can't mastermind it so it's exactly as we like it every single time. But I think it's just good to know like what delights me, what feels best for me. And when I can't have the thing that feels best for me right now, what helps the current situation feel better?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and appreciating those things that are feeling good are going to make the things that don't feel as good also feel better if you can keep them in your body. If it's not just like, oh, this isn't that thing that feels good, I wish I was having that thing that feels good. You can, in that moment, remember the feeling of those good feelings and have that whole sensation while you're experiencing the thing that doesn't feel good at the same time.
Yes. And then this makes me think of this. So I'll say this one last thing. We've had so many people come to us when a certain area of their life, they're generally like quite focused on one area of their life that doesn't feel like it's going well. And often it's an area in their life where there's a huge variable because it relates to another person who they can't change and they can't force to behave differently, right? So we work with them to see, what are you willing to do in terms of building your own capacity to shift out of some of those patterns, change some of your dance steps, and see what happens with this person. But a question I think we like to ask people is like, what about the other areas of your life, right? Like, are there things going well in any of those areas? Or do you feel as like a bigger sense of agency to add more pleasant, fulfilling, aligned feeling things in these other areas of your life? Like, what might that be like? And I think what we encounter is people are like, what? Like, I've just spent time mulling over 360,000 different ways of how I could potentially force that person to do what I want them to do, or feel bad because they're not doing the thing I want them to do. It never occurred to me to give any attention to other areas of my life. And I think that's really key. It's like we can't just focus on one area of your life, especially if it's the clunky area and the dance is involving somebody else too. And so the energy is brought in by more than just you. It's important to like build up other areas of your life where you have more agency in, so that can lift you a bit to have more capacity to do the harder thing in this other area of life. And when people realize that, they're like, oh, because I actually think I could do that thing in that other area of my life a little bit easier. Great. Try that. And then really feel the goodness of that. And then notice that that's like a deposit in your capacity bank account. And now you have more capacity to either bring more shifts to the other place or be more regulated to deal with someone else's way of being. Or you're going to realize those areas of my life feel so good. This other one doesn't matter to me so much anymore. Or those areas of my life feel so good, it has become so obvious that I need to get out of that other situation.
Yes.
Right? So,
yeah. It gives the energy an opportunity for pause. It infuses it with spirit. It's so powerful. It introduces, it's like a third party enters the dance and helps you change it.
Yes. Right. So underestimating the power of investing in other areas of your life, not as a distraction tool and a disassociation tool, because I did that tons. Right. And it gave me something. It gave me a reprieve from feeling the hard thing and looking at the hard thing I didn't want to look at and didn't have capacity to look at. But I didn't use the areas of my life that were feeling good. I didn't feel them on a body level. They were just check boxes on a to-do list. And I missed out on the opportunity to feel how they felt in my body, to give my body the lift, the nervous system, the cushion, to then work through the part of my life that felt harder.
Yeah, it is magic. It's not spells and things, but it is magic.
I would like a little, a spell stick wand.
Spell stick. I love it. I still have my wand here. We used wands a few episodes ago.
That's right. Yes, that's right. I think I need one.
Chi Better Man.
Okay.
Have you got a closing practice in mind?
A closing practice in mind. Yeah. This maybe feels like a weird one. Just noticing what's happening inside your mouth.
Ooh.
And just bringing a little bit more awareness to whatever it is you notice. And maybe even bringing some awareness to how familiar is this feeling? Do you ever hang out in this sensation? So for me, my mouth is super dry. I'm really thirsty. And it's interesting to notice it because when I'm thirsty, I think I either immediately drink or I try to not notice how it feels in my mouth. Mm-hmm. So now I'm noticing, I'm like, oh dear, this does not feel good. And so right now I'm just growing the capacity to be with a sensation that doesn't feel great without the immediate need to change it.
Well, I'm having a strange experience, so I'll share it.
Okay.
So I have freshly brushed teeth, and I'm hydrated, and the mouth is feeling good. Immediately, so I went into feeling around in my mouth with my tongue, and it became like an inventory of teeth. In this, the Pat Sajak comes to mind. It was immediately like there was some kind of game show, mouth inventory happening.
Neat.
It was nice.
So,
It was fun.
is it playful?
Yeah. Yeah.
You didn't expect it to feel like a game show while you checked out your mouth?
Not in the least. And it's like, yeah, everything's good here. We're in like a TV show from the 60s. Everything's good. It was a very visceral feeling with a
Neat.
song. Mm-hmm.
Well, what I noticed was I told you about the dry mouth, and I was practicing a skill, which is hang out with the thing that's uncomfortable for a little longer while actually hanging out with it, not like knowing it's there and focusing on something else, which is what I would normally do if I felt like my mouth is dry and I want to drink and I either don't have a drink or I can't get up yet. I would just distract myself from that feeling. There's nothing wrong with that. But in this case, I was like, well, let's just practice being really present to the thing that doesn't feel great.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really neat to notice like the period of time that felt just right, because there was another moment that said, well, I have a tiny sip of water left in my glass. Like I could drink it right now. And there was a moment of, yeah, if you continue to just sit with that, like that now feels like, why are you torturing yourself? Like that's not necessary. You could bring some relief to yourself. You've done the thing already. You've done the thing by sitting with the yuckiness for a little bit. It's not like this game where you got to see like, I don't know what other games there are, Survivor or whatever, where you got to like hold out the longest to not drink water. Like I'm not in that situation. Right. And it felt very nice to be like, okay, I felt how yucky it felt. And now I get to help it feel better. That feels nice. Right? Yeah.
Thanks, Gigi.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Both low on fluids. We gotta go.
We gotta go.
All right. Well, thank you guys for being here. As always, please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. We'll see you next time.